All right, we have to start with the goal in overtime. Like, were you nervous? I mean, it's gold medal. It's overtime. Like, what was going through your mind in that gold medal hockey game?
It was really nerve-wracking. My wife and I were awake watching it at 4 a.m. My brother and I were up 30 minutes prior to the game, just kind of talking and getting whatever nerves we had out as best we could before the puck drop. And on the first shift, like going to the beginning of the game, like the first shift of that game, I was like, wow, okay. Like the boys look really good. Like on paper going into that game, like Canada had a better lineup, probably what most people would feel. And after that first shift, I was like, okay, the boys really stand a chance. And then Canada ended up just kind of dominating and taking over for especially the second and third period. So I was so nervous. I was pacing around the room, and then they get the power play at the end, and I was like, shoot, this is probably going to be it. And then we claw our way out of that. And I look at Ashley and I say, Ashley, these boys need to go to overtime. We need 3-on-3. It'll balance this game out. And so once it went to overtime, I felt better than in the third period as well as in the second period when it was 5-on-5 and Canada was just really truly just dominating our boys. But yeah, I mean, just elation though. I don't know how I didn't wake up my two boys on the other side of the house when we did score that goal.
I didn't get up until the end of the third, um, or partway through the third. So I'm not a true fan. But yeah, that's the thing with hockey. Like, it's a team can dominate, but if the puck doesn't go in, then it just doesn't go in, and that's I've been an Avalanche fan, and I remember at the early 2000s when Patrick Waugh was the goalie, and it just seemed like he was taking 100 shots a night, but it didn't matter. He just didn't let anything through. So you can put a tremendous amount of pressure on the goalie, and as long as he keeps them out, then you have a chance, and that's the way it works.
It is, and I'm an Avalanche fan as well, and so it's the first time I guess since they had the Four Nations tournament last year. That was, I mean, most will see that just as an exhibition in comparison to the Olympics, but this is truly the first time where I was like, wow, McKinnon, McCarr, those guys are terrifying when they aren't the guys you're cheering for. Like
Yeah.
every time they get the puck, it's like, oh no, like these conflicting feelings of normally I want that player to do so well, and I didn't this time, and that was a different feeling that I'm not used to.
Yeah, strange twist. I wonder, like, afterwards, how long it took for one of them to like reach out to the teammate and be like, "Hey, man, good job," or like, who was it? Was it, if you're a team, your teammates and you're close, but then you're playing for the Olympic gold, and then your enemies. How long does it take for that rivalry to wear off so that you can then be teammates again? I don't know, but that's it's pretty crazy. But they're professionals, and Canada's done that to us so many times. So, you know.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, what a game of bounces though, like you said. Um, sometimes the puck just doesn't go your way, and sometimes it does. And I think you're a creator of your own luck, based off of your effort. And if you can position yourself as best you can, sometimes that you'll get a bounce where maybe people on the outside looking in will feel like it's undeserving, but um, you might be more deserving of it than maybe even you realize as well.
Yeah. That's the perfect segue to fishing, particularly steelhead fishing. I think you put yourself in a position to take
Yeah.
advantage of luck or the opportunity. So let's kind of deep dive in. Let's start with the rod. Um, what type of rods do you have, and then why? At this point, you've been able to cast some rods, fish with some rods, and now you've made the decision to have the rods that you have. What and why?
So my rods all have a lot of different practice or like a different mode of which I fish. So when I'm fishing out of a boat, I prefer a single hand rod over a switch rod. Fishing an indicator rig, it's just a little lighter in hand, but I do prefer a 10 foot over a 9 foot rod.
So are we talking
Um,
like on a boat in Bristol Bay type thing, or drift boat somewhere else, or what? What do we? What's the boat situation?
Wind drifting, yeah.
Okay.
Whether you're getting rowed somewhere, which we'll do out in Bristol Bay on the Kwijak, the Knack when you're bead fishing primarily, or sometimes you're dead drifting flesh, and doing it under an indicator. But I do prefer a single hand over a switch rod. Switch rods are great though. It can be great for indicator fishing as well. But I like the lightweight single hand. Um, and then when swinging flies, though, I'll always have a switch rod and a spey rod in the boat, whether I'm fishing for myself or if I'm guiding. And between the two, I'm fishing in the exact same way, but I'll make sure that there's some differences between the two, and maybe sinking tips or line density. Sometimes, if it's windy, it'll be a little bit harder to cast the switch rod. And so, switching to that spey rod, it has a little bit more backbone, a little more power. You can kind of punch through the wind or fight it a little bit better. And so, the rods that I own now have made me a versatile angler that allow me to fish different ways depending on the situation.
What was it about those rods? Do you like a medium fast action, a fast action? What do you have for the single handed?
I fish a 10-foot NRX plus. It's a G Loomis rod,
Okay.
and it's a 6 weight, and it's got like just enough backbone. I feel comfortable landing any fish, especially out of a boat when you're drifting with that fish. I feel comfortable landing any fish. And then, um, sorry, repeat your question there. My mind went.
Yeah, no,
somewhere else there for a
that
second.
was right on there. Like, what type of rod do you have, and
Okay.
then why did you choose that one? The G Loomis, I don't. It's totally ridiculous, but because G Loomis also makes uh, gear rods, conventional rods,
Hmm.
and and like bass rods, I thought, well, they can't be like a real fly rod company because they do everything. And so if you do everything, then you might not be like a specialty brand. And so that was
Mm.
when I was first starting off. I had a chance at a lower end Sage, so I went with that because this has got to be fly fishing. They got to be experts in fly fishing, and that was a great call. But then realized that G Loomis does make an exceptional rod, and it's not a matter of because they don't specialize in one particular method. That doesn't mean that they're not a good rod.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is the first G Loomis that I've owned, and but it is kind of confusing because this is the NRX, and I'm trying to remember, but their gear rods are similar acronyms with an X at the end, and so it's hard to differentiate it if someone is just going to tell you in passing what they're fishing. You might not even know if it's a fly rod or a gear rod, but they make great sticks. I really enjoy that rod. And but every like top rod company has the equivalent of that rod, and they compete, I mean, head to head really well. The Sage R8, or previously the Sage X, will compete with this NRX Plus that I have in the same weight and length. It You might find some subtleties and differences, but I always tell people when they're friends that come to me asking what they should spend money on, I always tell them that don't worry about a nice rod, get a decent reel because your drag will actually affect you catching fish over a rod.
Mhm.
So, and then once you delve into the sport more and you can differentiate some of those subtleties, you may find more enjoyment with a more expensive rod. But one of my favorite rods is the first rod I ever bought to this day, and it's still a rod that I use on a regular basis, and it's a cheap Sportsman's Warehouse
Mhm.
Fenwick that I
Mhm.
just love.
So I've heard both of those things. I've heard both spend the money on a rod because you're going to be casting a lot, and if you're casting all day, you're going to enjoy the experience. If the rod can do what you need it to do, different types of casts, you're not going to get frustrated. So spend the money on the rod because as long as you have a baseline capable reel, then you'll be fine. And I found that application makes a lot of sense when you're presenting flies to creek trout, smaller river trout. Um, but as you get into more like the larger fish, the salmon, the steelhead, all it takes is a cheaper reel to kind of catch, or to gum up or something, or even if it's a little bit heavier, the balance is a little bit off. And so, yeah, it makes sense that I've heard it the other way, that make sure that you get a good reel first and a capable fly rod that you can cast well.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that. The last one there, I think that the reel is so important. And regardless, I should say, of what species you're targeting, that even like smaller fish, like in streams and little creeks and stuff, if you have your drag set correctly for that fish, it's going to, I think you'll produce more fish over having an expensive rod and a dinky reel. And yeah, I stand by that, and it's always the advice that I give my friends because all rods are going to bend, and if you get something kind of middle of the road or even slightly less than that, it's going to be a pretty capable rod, and it'll be affordable for you.
Mhm. As far as reels go, you say you have a Nautilus?
I do. So I have a few Nautiluses, and I love Nautilus. I have various reels though. I have some Nautiluses. I have some Taylor reels,
Hmm.
which is kind of a direct to consumer company. They make some fun anodization on their reels, so they look cool. I have a Seracion, which is a click and pawl. It's a two-hand specific reel, very heavy. It was actually given to me as a tip.
Hmm.
And so it's pretty cool. Anytime I use it, I think of Dean and brings back good memories. But yeah, you brought up steelhead fishermen. Those click and pawl reels are kind of a nostalgic thing for those fishermen. It's kind of a niche within the fly fishing community. But they're pretty fun to fish and they sound crazy, or at least they can.
Hmm. I fish with a Lamson. That was the
Yep.
first. I don't even know what the first reel was. It was like the combo Fluger, whatever the thing you get for $60, and you get the reel, you get the rod,
Yeah.
and then the fly line that decomposes in the water. Um,
Uh-huh.
so the first like nice fly rod or fly reel was a Lamson. It was a conic, I think, and then I got the Guru, and I really liked that. There were a couple times where I slipped and fell, and just smashed it on a rock, and it didn't even bother it
Yep.
whatsoever. So I've kind of like been pretty in with them. And then a buddy of mine who came up to Alaska a couple of times, he got me a Galvin reel because his company supplied
Yep.
uh, the material for them, and that thing is awesome. I've had that. It's a T7, and I've had that for years, and it just works. And it's really scratched up, but man, the Galvin is such a great reel.
I think you'd find that Galvin would be quite comparable to the Nautilus. And the times that I've handled Galvins from clients or just friends that have had them, they feel quite similar. Sound pretty similar too, like that soft click in and out. Um, and so once you get into the sport more, like you'll find your own taste and preferences, whether that's you brought up faster, a slower action rod, or do you like a quiet reel or a loud reel? It's just like those are the subtleties that a lot of times it won't change your catch rate, but it'll change the way that things operate and it will affect your enjoyment. I
Yeah.
have my first reel was a Lamson Guru, and I still have it, love it. And I think Lamson's probably your most affordable reel that you can get for your money. I also have an Able that I love that I fish a lot too.
Hmm. What about difference in like? Do you have different spools available? Do you ever swap out spools, or do you swap out whole reels?
So as I've gotten further into the sport, now I'm swapping reels, and I'm fortunate to be in a position to do that. But earlier, when I was getting into it, I definitely had a couple spools, and that made things. It was the same, and I mean, you have the same effect between just having multiple spools versus multiple reels when you're fishing one rod and switching different lines if that's all you need to do. But now I don't ever go on the boat with less than three rods, and a lot of times I have five, and so you need those old extra reels. Um, but having an extra spool is super effective, and I did fish that way for quite some time.
Hmm. What about arbor size? Do you get into some of the large arbor ones? Are you worried a whole lot about retrieval, or is it mostly just about pairing something that's nice and balanced?
Um, Kind of the answer is yes to that. It kind of depends on like with these two hand systems. I'm not super worried about the arbor so much as I am the weight of the reel. Like the Seracion that I have is has a really small arbor, but it's a very dense reel and it provides a lot of good balance when you're fishing those longer lengthed rods. Um, I have done a little bit of saltwater fly fishing, and I do feel like in saltwater fly fishing, having a lightweight, large arbor reel is advantageous. Um, but in the middle of that, fishing trout, I think a large arbor can always help you. But I'm more worried about the balance because it'll affect over the course of the day how tired I get and maybe how that rod will function because the balance has a lot of effect on your cast.
Hmm. Next would be fly lines. And this is, again, when I started off, I was kind of first directed to Rio, and you don't really have to go anywhere else. It seems like Rio is really good, but Scientific Angler also is really, really good. Is there like or I guess Orvis too. Is there much of an option outside of Rio or Scientific Angler?
So, funny enough, I was just texting with a client today, and he just put me onto a new brand of lines and bridge lines, and they're two hand specific. But there's a lot of options out there, more than I think we realize. Because you kind of get kind of like you said, you're put onto Rio, and then it's just like it's all you really need. Like all these line companies, unless they're very like specific within the sport and only do one mode, like some of these two hand line companies, like that's all they do. They don't have your traditional weight forward single hand lines. But with like the companies like Rio and Scientific Angler or Orvis, like they kind of cover the wide spectrum of your average angler. And so, but I preference wise, I have used them all, and I've honed in on Scientific Angler. I feel like their durability is better
Hmm.
over time. I also like that they have incorporated overlining their line, overweighting it, and it just makes casting and loading your rod a little bit easier with a little less effort. The line does it a little bit more for you. And Rio has started to do that as well, and other line companies as well. But I think that having a line that is overweighted is better than going and buying an actual heavier line, like one class up, because of the science that goes into, like they say it's one like half a weight heavy or one line size heavy. I think that even when it says one line size heavy, that you might find that their science going into that is going to be a little bit more honed in on what it should be for
Hmm.
overlining rather than you might actually truly overline your rod if you go up a weight and did it on your own
Hmm.
um, without doing your homework, maybe.
Yeah, I've used some airflow tips, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think most of the fly shops I go into are fairly small, and so you can't carry, five different brands. You kind of go with the recognizable ones, and that's your Scientific Angler and Rio. But have you used
Right.
airflow at all? Or are you familiar with much of their
I
stuff?
have. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of their single hand stuff. We a lot of our client rods though have airflow lines on them. They're super durable lines, which is really nice. And one nice thing in Alaska about airflow is that they don't deteriorate from bug dope.
Oh.
So the DEET and bug dope will eat the coating of most other fly lines, but um, the I think it's because they're PVC free, or maybe it's because they have PVC. I think it's PVC free that it won't like melt under the bug dope. Not that it'll like you can watch it melt in your hand, but over time, if you're handling it, it will eat that coating away on your traditional Rio lines and Scientific Angler and
Hmm.
stuff.
The water up there is fairly chilly. So would you look for like an all around, or are certain lines less susceptible to the to water temperature?
Yeah, the all around lines will handle your cold water temps just fine. Um, Unless you're fishing something that's like truly cold. I'm trying to think. I don't see like cold water specific lines very much there. It's just kind of that's kind of the normal line is it'll handle cold water. And then obviously when you go into the tropics and stuff, then you get into your warm water lines that can handle the heat and they won't gum up in your guides when you're casting and that coating won't get soft and gummy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's one
So
thing I liked about the Rio. box, you can kind of look at the box and you think, okay, this is, it's got a redfish on it, or it's got a tarpon on it, and so it's okay, that seems like it's a at least a starting point when you're looking at species and trying to match that.
Yeah, and generally it's actually pretty accurate.
Have you used the outbound short at all? I've seen a couple people use that, and people kind of talk about it. I mean, is it? It's a shooting line from Rio, and a lot of stuff is advertised as being the next best thing, and sometimes it ends up being a good thing. Other times it's just like a marketing super maybe specific, but not really worth it. Have you used the outbound short at all?
So I have an outbound short that I have not lined on a reel yet. And the one that I have has a fully integrated line with a sinking tip at the front. So it'll be just thinking about it and casting other lines that have been similar to that. It's going to be a little bit heavier casting long distances, but doing that like 30, 40, I mean, you'll be able to get it in one false cast. Like it's going to just want to fly. But if you're trying to carry really long distances, you're going to have a very fast action rod to generate the line speed to keep that your proper loops in the air.
Yeah, I
But
threw.
I think they're going to cast really good because it's going to act almost like a single hand shooting line, like you're saying, that one false cast, two at most, and you'll be able to really push it out there.
Yeah, I have that on a Lamson reel, and then I put that. I got an R8 Sage, and I was casting from my skiff to king salmon, and
Mhm.
it was pretty crazy because I was sure that this wasn't going to be. People talk about the shooting head, and then the picture on the front is some guy just absolutely bombing out a cast, which, okay, well, whatever, advertising. But I really felt like I had to like hold on to the line. I had to be very careful because it was just like flying out. So
Mhm.
I was super, super happy and super pleased with that. Um, but like you said, with the fast action, if you don't have, you got to be kind of aware of things. I'm not a great caster, but yeah, pairing that line with a good fast action rod is definitely the way to go. And so I'm excited to use that a whole bunch more.
Yeah, I'm excited to load mine up, and I bought that line with my 10 foot six weight G Loomis, and with that in mind, there's a couple of different variations of that outbound short line, and there's another one that I'd like to get that isn't a full intermediate sinking running line, but is a floating and then has a section of sink. And I think it'd be a little easier to cast, especially long distances, but still would have that the principle of when you just need to make that like run of the mill, you're fishing out of a drift boat and you just need to cast it 30, 40 feet, one false cast, and you're there, and get to fishing as quick as you can rather than spend time casting.
Mhm. What do you recommend for if someone was going to come up and fish where you're at? Or sorry, you're in Soldotna now. You're not fishing there. Actually, well, maybe yeah. If someone's coming up to fish the Kasilof or to fish the Kenai, what would you recommend line wise versus maybe Bristol Bay, or maybe they're the same thing?
Um, Fairly similar. Like on the Kasilof, you got a lot of rocks and boulders, and on the Kenai, you got a lot of rocks and like log or sweepers. You got a lot of trees that are kind of around the perimeter of that river. So depending on the section that you're fishing, it could be the same as what I'd recommend on the Kviak, but it could vary depending on the section and the run or the slots or the features in the river that are in front of you. But I think that a lot of the time you can get the job done with what you have with proper manipulation of your line. And um, if you're going into something knowing that this is the mode you're going to fish, I think that you'd find a way around the features and to fish those features in an advantageous way.
Mhm.
So
Do you think people overthink the fly rod, the reel, or the line? Which one do people kind of second guess, over guess, or overanalyze?
myself, I overanalyze line, especially when it comes to two hand stuff. I
Is
got
that
into
is
two
that a
hand
good
fishing.
thing? Because sometimes you like overthink it, and or you think a lot about it because it makes sense. Other times it's really don't need to put that much time and effort into scrutinizing or
Yeah,
that. So you think it's worth it?
I think it is. I think the getting a proper line, you could have a cheap rod and a very good line, And if the marriage is good, that rod's going to feel like $1,000 rod if it casts straight, and the line is going to determine that. And so having the proper marriage of line and rod is just so important. Um, and so I go through a lot of trial and error with these two hand shooting heads. Like you read something on a forum or a buddy tells you they just got this line, and it's like, all right, well, I'll go spend 45 bucks, 50 bucks, whatever it is, and try this thing out and see what it's like in my own setups. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And so I've had more trial and error with two hand shooting heads than I have with anything else. And, but it's been pretty fun to hone in on what works good. And whether it's a two hand rod or a single hand rod, when the marriage is right, it is just such an enjoyable experience to cast whatever that combination is. It is, I feel, even more fun to cast a two hand rod than a single hand rod when the marriage is right, just because you're casting further and you just, I don't know, you feel good about yourself when
Mm-hmm.
when you see 100-foot cast go out, you know?
Yeah. What about leaders? You got like Rio makes that the Versa leader. Scientific Angler has the like a salmon, an absolute salmon steelhead leader. What are you going for leaders?
So when I'm fishing two hand, I'm just using a straight stretch of leader. I'm not having to really taper things down at all. And I got, oh, show you this. Got my box here. So in my boat box, I fish. It's a NAM product. It's out of Sweden. It says Zenta at the top, but NAM NAM is the company that makes this. And this is a monofilament that is fluoro coated. So I used to fish just straight fluorocarbon, but this. So if you compare the tensile strength of this fluoro coated monofilament versus this straight fluorocarbon, this fluorocarbon, let's see, I guess the diameters are slightly different, but this Rio that's 1X is 0.254 millimeters in diameter, and it's 13.3 pounds test. And this non-product is 0.33 millimeters in diameter, so zero point 0.8 more. But this is rated at 11, let's see, 26.3 pounds. So for hardly any more diameter, you're getting almost twice or a little bit, just about twice the actual tensile strength. And so fishing my two-hand setups when those strikes are really hard and you're fishing a tight line system, I have not, I mean, knock on wood, I have not broken off on a hook set on any of these, and I have on others. And so I'm really impressed with this fluoro-coated monofilament. And I think with gear too, that like you know what you know, and you're always with the right mind, you're always going to learn something from someone else. And one of the coolest parts about having a lodge is our clients have been awesome, and they all come in with their own background and they show us something new, and it becomes something that becomes my own, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff Kelly put me onto this, and I fished it ever since. It's
Nice.
awesome.
When you need to get down a little bit, because what's some of the depth of some of these rivers, and then how do you kind of fish those columns? If there's a section that's maybe 10 feet or deeper versus kind of a mid depth versus kind of a knee high or something like that, how are you adjusting water depths? How are you getting flies to those areas? Are you adding weight? Are you adding sink tip? Are you going heavier fly? What's your approach in the varying depths of water?
So it would depend if I was fishing an indicator rig, like on a single hand rod, or if I was swinging flies on a two hand setup, which you can also swing flies on a single hand setup. But to keep things simple, like swinging on a two hand setup, I would adjust my sink tip as needed. And adjusting your sink tip will get you down more, but you can fish deeper than maybe you would think with even lighter weight setups with proper line manipulation. Um, and so when you're swinging flies and you cast out and if you give your line a good mend, so similar to what you would do with your indicators, that when you mend, you're creating that dead drift. Well, when you mend a swing setup, then what happens is your fly is going to drop because there's slack in the line, and so it's not taut, and it's not getting pulled maybe up the water column due to its tight line. And so when you mend, it'll drop a little bit. It also slows your swing down. And when it slows the swing down, it'll continue to drop a little bit too. So I focus a lot on my line management when I'm fishing something deeper. I don't always have to change my setup. I just have to change the way in which I attack it. Sometimes that means casting a little bit further upstream than maybe in a faster run, or sorry, a slower run. But sometimes if I'm fishing in a slower run, if I cast too far upstream, then it's just going to, before my line gets tight, that fly is dropping. And sometimes it'll drop too far, maybe you snag up. So the next cast, you would cast a little further downstream and let that current take the line and keep things tight and not allow it to get all the way to the bottom in a slower run. And then when I'm fishing like an indicator setup, if I'm wanting to get deep, I'll typically just add split shot, raise my indicator if I need to as well, and just try and get down to the bottom and make sure it's on the bottom before where I expect there to be a fish. I want that fish to see it for as far as I can comfortably in front of it, coming at it, making it look as natural as possible.
Mm-hmm. When you are doing the line manipulation, how important is it to stay still connected? I know sometimes if I get a little sloppy with the line and I'm not tight with it, I miss some strikes or I didn't even feel a strike. So is it all just you get used to making sure that you're manipulating the line, but you're still able to get a subtle take?
Yeah, so when I'm fishing two-hand stuff and I'll cast out, I give myself a nice upstream mend, lifting all the line that's kind of on the surface out of the water and placing it above where the fly is. Then what I'll do is I don't just immediately relax and introduce slack into the line, but I'll keep things tight and I'll hold my arm or hold my rod away from my body, and then I'll just follow the slack down. And then eventually, when it gets down to the bottom, then things become tight again, and I can relax a little bit. But you definitely want to stay tight because you could miss fish that are aggressive, and those are the fish you want to catch the fish that's going to hit mid swing because those are the fish that are hot.
Yeah, I've had at least a few times when I'm I'm reaching out and the rod is way above my head because I want to keep it, keep the slack off there. And then you get a strike and there's there's hardly any, you don't have the same sort of leverage and you're trying to either strip it or set. It's pretty fun and awkward, but it makes for a great little bit of chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, your range of motion just isn't as much. So they'll catch you with your pants down sometimes, and that's just the way it goes.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
About flies, do you like it when you have to get a little deeper? Would you rather go? You said line manipulation, but do you really like heavy flies to help get you down there, or do you like casting kind of a midweight fly and just rely on your line manipulation to get it down? What do you prefer?
I have, in the last few years, preferred weightless flies with a sink tip that I feel is good for that stretch of river, and then manipulate my line and do what I feel is best for getting my fly to where I feel like it needs to be. But I will say that you can manipulate the fly and especially the movement of that fly a lot more with like a floating line and a heavy fly with a decent sized leader. You can get that thing to really move with some line manipulation. It doesn't get dampened by your sink tip that it would be between your fly line and your leader and your fly. So I guess it depends on, sometimes it might depend on species. I do like fishing, like when I was fishing brown trout down in Utah when I was in college and finally figured out what streamer fishing was all about. Like fishing a floating line with a decent size or like a properly weighted fly for the river that I was on, I could really manipulate that fly and you'd see those browns just chase out from behind their boulder or under their log jam, whatever it was. Like you could really pull these fish out of their little comfortable spots when you could get that fly to wiggle and move in a vulnerable way, vulnerable looking if it were to be a bait fish. And so it kind of depends on maybe the species and how I attack things as well. But on the Kweejack, um, I have honed in on weightless flies. I still fish weighted flies, but my day to day is typically pretty weight free.
Hmm. You've talked about using beads. You've talked about flesh flies. What are some of your other favorites for either Bristol Bay or for Kenai Peninsula?
I think it's important to like always have your um, kind of your fundamental. Like you need your your natural colored flies in your box, and you need your blacks and your some of your lighter tones. And then to start your day, like hopefully you have a little bit of insight or information on maybe what was happening before you got there so that you can make the most of your time. But um, I will opt on like a bright day. I fish a bright fly and I start there and I'll change as I feel necessary. And then on dark days, I'll fish dark flies or at night. Um, and I think that my dad and I go back and forth on this actually. He says the opposite. He says he likes fishing dark flies on sunny days. And in the end, that just becomes a conversation between two fishermen and thinking they might know something about what these fish are thinking. But um, I like to think that on a bright day that anything in the water is going to be brighter. Even darker toned things, they might reflect more and they might have a brighter contrast. And roles reversed when things are darker, whether it's overcast or getting dark at the end of the day.
Yeah, I don't know if that's reassuring, but there's so many things when it comes to fishing in general, fly fishing specifically, that you can have someone who completely believes in the opposite of you. But because it works, it makes you think, okay, well, I can't really be wrong, but also could things be better if I made this switch? And man, it's tough. Like favorite color when it comes to fly fishing. I really like pinks. I don't like oranges at all. And then
Mm-hmm.
other people just they go purple and they go black and that's it. And I have them. I don't fish them as much and I don't fish them probably as well as I should to get like an objective, data point. But man, I just really, really like those brighter colors. Um, and they work, I guess. Could they be better? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I like bright colors too, and I like to. I have all my stuff right here. I can even show you. Um, so one thing that I like to do is I like to tie with bright colors, but I like to try and try and be subtle about it. So you'll see like this is just a black and blue, which is a very oh, it's not in the frame. It's a really traditional color combination, but I try and kind of dull out the contrast between the black and the blue, and I do that in with this fly with the marabou collar, and it covers up that flash. But once this gets wet, the kind of the underglow and the tones that come out are pretty bright, especially when light hits it. And so there isn't just like a black to white contrast. And that's something that I've kind of keyed in on and have some secret color combinations, and I have some others that are just pretty generic. But I have found a lot of success with these, with that kind of style of tying these flies.
Do you have like one of those little water things where you put it in the water and there's a little bit of a current so you can see what it's going to look like in the water? Or do you like have your dad cast and then you get in the water with a snorkel? Or how do you observe how it looks in the water?
I don't have one of those. I can't remember what they're called. That little swimmer's tube,
Yeah.
fly tire, swimmer's tube, whatever. I don't have one. I have some friends that do. Um, I'd like to get one because it would help you kind of, especially in the off season in the winter when you're not fishing as much. It would help you kind of get ahead of the learning curve, maybe with a new pattern by seeing what it does in the water and seeing what it looks like when it's wet, and you could turn lights on, off, or change the brightness to kind of see what it might look like. So I'd like to get one, but I haven't yet. So a lot of times I tie something every night. I typically tie a fly in the lodge, and we have a few vices there. And clients, Jeff, the guy that put me onto this leader material, he brings a lot of material, and he'll bring a vice, and we sit there and we just tie flies and talk about the day. And so the next day I'll bring that fly out and I'll see how it swims just at my feet and just kind of pull it around. And if it's a new fly.
Do you ever get kind of upset with yourself for trying new things so often? I mean, if you have a fly rod you love, you have a reel you love, you have flies that work and you really like. So why mess with the program? What is it about? Are you tweaking to try to make things better, or are you just curious? And have there been times where you thought, man, I should have just stuck with what I knew was going to work?
Um, I guess you can't be a gear junkie if you're not always kind of dabbling with what you hear about from friends and clients and people you meet on the river or whatever water you're fishing. I'm definitely a gear junkie to a fault, and so I don't have any issues with it. My wife does, but um, I do think though that if I'm going to go fish somewhere new, that I don't mess with trying to change from what I know or have confidence works, because I want to make the most of my time just fishing that spot, and my learning curve would be better spent learning that how to fish that water than to figure something out within my own gear that I could have taken care of prior to my fishing.
Mhm. That makes sense. What about waders? So we got, or actually anything else to add about the fly, rod, reel, sink tips, leader, flies?
On sink tips, it's important to have, you don't need a real wide variety, but cover a couple different bases, so that when you do get to a run that would require something a little heavier or lighter, that you have a little bit of variance in what you can attack it with. And I think that it's really important for you to find a confidence fly or a couple, because kind of what you were saying, like you liked bright colors, you said, and someone that fishes completely opposite of you, and you guys both could be catching fish in the same water, and that's going to probably be because of how you're fishing it, not necessarily because of what it was in that case. And if you are confident in the fly that you're throwing, you will fish it better. You won't pull it too soon. You'll let it hang out there, especially when you're swinging flies. Like a lot of your bites come at the bottom of your swing when you're just kind of standing there and doing nothing. And if you aren't confident in that fly, you'd probably start recasting too soon. And you never know when that fish is looking at that and waiting for whatever they're waiting for to come in and then bite it. So fish confidently always, but if you aren't confident in something, you'll always fish that water better if you were confident in the fly or sometimes the setup, but especially the fly you're throwing.
Yeah, actually, I guess we should probably go casting first. When you are casting, are there, do you like water loading? Do you think people spend too much time trying to cast and false cast and don't spend enough time just putting the fly in the water? What do you see with some of the people that you guide?
Yeah, I see it with people I guide. I see it with myself, even when I am not in the rower's seat and fishing with friends and we're rotating, who's rowing. And when I'm up to fish, there's multiple times where I'm doing the same thing I'm telling my clients maybe not to do, where I cast out of the boat, and let's say we're using indicator rigs and we're casting, and it's like, oh, I didn't feel like I got all the line out there. And then you recast and it went 2 feet further. It doesn't change at all what was going to happen on the previous cast. And you're like, oh, that felt way better. So I think it's super important that once you kind of have your distance set, if you're fishing out of a boat with indicators, beating, nymphing, whatever, just fish. Like the less time you spend with your line in the air, the more time you're going to have an opportunity to be productive catching fish. So
what about hook sets? Is that something that to be on it, to be, if you're fishing Bristol Bay, is it like you set the as soon as the indicator bobs or stops, or tinks? Do you wait a second if you're swinging? Like, what are some tactics? Because I know there's I was watching a fly fishing video about down in New Zealand, and you have to wait 2 or 3 seconds and for the thing to kind of take the fly and turn its head. Same thing with Atlantic salmon. Apparently, you got to wait until it like goes back to its holding area and then takes it. So what are the fish hook sets like up there?
When you're fishing indicators, you definitely want to have a quick hook set. You don't want to give it any time. And just trust that indicator. And I always tell my clients that sometimes snags turn into fish. Just if it moves, you're setting. And but when it comes to two-hand fishing, Marion, when we were previously on this podcast with you a few weeks ago, she even brought up that she had this one fish on the knack that just, and as best as we could tell, was a pretty good fish with how aggressive the bumps and the takes that she was having that weren't committed to getting hooked. But she was fighting every urge to not lift her rod tip. And it's really important when swinging that you don't trout set, meaning you're lifting your rod tip. And so when you're swinging, you do want to wait. I tell clients and my mom or my siblings when I'm fishing with them to just let the fish hook itself as best as you can within reason. Sometimes you do have to have a reaction and do what you can to hook it, but it's better to, instead of lifting your rod tip, if you were to just kind of pump your arm back, keep your rod level, and just kind of pull the line to you, that is a better practice than to lift your rod tip. And so it's still so hard though. When you feel a fish, all you want to do is react. And so it's really hard to not. One thing that I do recommend to clients and the way that I fish up there as well on the Queejack Knack is I fish a pretty light drag. And I feel like that helps. I mean, it's not ultra light, but those fish's mouths are pretty soft. And so if you were to fish too stiff of a drag, when those fish do get hooked, you have a better chance of when they're running that there would be too much resistance and it could just rip that hook out. And then we fish a light drag over there where that fish, when it bites, it'll also have a better opportunity to start running. And it might not be hooked fully, but then once you put a little bend in your rod, it'll finish puncturing and finish setting that hook. So that can help as well.
Now, what about gear? I guess we could transition from there. You have your waders, and do you have like a little hook sharpener and nippers? And what kind of waders do you have, and what's attached to your waders?
So I fish the Simms G4Z wader. It's a zip front wader. They're very comfortable. I have two sets. I have a boot foot for winter, and then I have a stocking foot that I put wading boots on for the summer. Those boot fit ones are much warmer when you're fishing cold weather. You don't have water constantly going around, just
right.
a millimeter or like 4 or 5 millimeters of neoprene, so I do like that. And then attached to me, always have my wading belt, just for safety, for one, like most importantly, but then it also on that belt, I'll have my guide pliers. And I think every fisherman should have a pair of pliers on them, whether that's with handling fish or just any of your gear, pinch and split shot, all that stuff. And you don't need an expensive set, but have something that's reliable. So I always have my guide pliers on there, and they have a nipper built into them. It's a Simms guide plier that I've had for 5 or 6 years now. But I do carry, excuse me, I do carry a pair of separate nippers on a lanyard around my neck that just allows me to do things right with. It's smaller in my hand. It's easier to have both hands on my line when I'm clipping little things. And when you're putting, like, I use a lot of those silicone pegs when I'm putting beads on my line to peg it. And I can clip those silicone pegs completely flush with a small pair of nippers where I couldn't with the nippers that are built into my pliers. And I also carry a whistle on my lanyard for safety or for bears or whatever.
Do you keep that guide plier in the holster? I'm just checking them out here online right now. Do you keep them in the holster, or do you have them like in your waders?
It's in the holster. Yep. So
Okay.
they're constantly getting wet and stuff. But yeah, like I said, I think I've had them for 5 years now. Like it
Nice.
lasted a long time. They're awesome.
Have you had them in salt water at all?
I haven't, but they're aluminum, so they wouldn't tarnish or get rusty or anything like that, which is nice. And they're lightweight but durable.
Mm. What else you got gear wise? Do you go vest, fanny pack, sling?
I don't own a vest. My dad got a vest pretty early on in fly fishing, and I tried it and didn't like it. But when it comes to packs, I have just about every one of them. And it kind of just depends on what the outing is. I'll take something more lightweight if it's just a few hours or a light day trip. Or if I need to pack a lunch, then I'll bring something a little bigger that could accommodate a little bit more gear or just storage for food. But I really like Fish Pond's sling packs. And a lot of other companies have caught on to what they did previously, but they had good net holsters built in
Hmm.
into like the back of those sling packs. They'd have a sleeve that the rod hand or that the net handle would go down. So it really made it a one-stop shop for carrying everything that you needed and comfortably. So I've had a sling pack from Fish Pond since like 2016 that I still use regularly for those little day outings.
Is that the Thunderhead?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it is.
Yeah.
And it's not the waterproof one. It's an old one. But
Oh, okay. Because I have an older one. It is waterproof. It's green. I love it. It's
yep.
like you said, it's got the built-in rod holder, which is really nice.
Yep.
This happened with me right off the bat. I bought a vest because I thought that was what you do, and then I
Yep.
would
Right.
wait. I'd put so much stuff in it that it would kind of get in the way, and then it would just feel weird. And then I would have my water bottle in the back mesh, and it just sucked. And so I went with a pack, but then I put the pack down. So then I decided on the sling, and love the sling.
Yeah. I love this thing. I also have Fish Pond's chest pack. And the cool thing about their chest pack, it doesn't hold near as much. And sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable because it kind of rides, depending on, I guess, how you have it tightened up. But the way I've had mine in the past is kind of rides kind of right where the top of your waders are. And with me using a zipper front wader, that
Mm.
zipper's kind of stiff. And so every now and then it'll catch that. But when it's not doing that, that chest pack is awesome. And on the back, the strapping system, it has a holster for your net.
Mm.
So it's a really awesome small pack for when you just want to be really lightweight and not carrying a lot of baggage.
Which one is that?
I believe it's their, let's see.
Storm Shadow. There's a Storm
No,
Shadow and there's a
it is,
Thunderhead.
it's the Thunderhead. And
Okay, so
so
that's
I also
definitely
have the
minimum.
back. Yeah, just really minimalist. But what's cool about it is that I also have the backpack, which is nice for when I'm in the boat. It's waterproof. I don't worry about it. It's rugged as I'll get out so I can set it down on anything and not worry about it. But that chest pack will clip into the backpack straps. So when I'm on a really long outing, like if I'm going dark to dark on a full day and I need a lunch and I am going to fish maybe a couple different ways. Last year I went fishing with my brother and his girlfriend, and we were fishing fairly close to home, but we got there early and stayed late. I had that backpack. I had all of our lunches in the back. I had the chest pack so that I didn't need to take my backpack off when I needed to quick change something that was attached to the backpack straps. And then I have an extra rod holster. So on one side of the backpack, I had a net that was going down that was holstered. And then on the other side, I had an extra rod that they make a rod holster that attaches to that backpack. And so, I mean, I was overloaded. I didn't need all the stuff that I had, but I guess if you're going to be a gear junkie, you might as well have it. So, yeah, we were loaded for any situation.
Nice. Do you put a fly box or two like in the waders? Because I've found that like having a box in there with whatever I might need. So if I'm doing like a camping trip, I try to pare it down, and then in the evenings or at lunch, or if I go back to the pack, I can add more stuff to it, but try to keep it as minimal as possible. That way I don't have 2 or 3 boxes in the waders plus the pack. And so it just becomes kind of cumbersome. I like to have I have a sagebrush camera bag and I keep my camera with me, but after a while there's just so much stuff and it's kind of not overwhelming or frustrating, but it just feels like I've reached over clunkiness. So do you have everything on you at all times for the trips, like no matter what it is, or do you do most of your planning before you actually go on the trip and make that decision about how much stuff you're going to take then?
When kind of going back to that day of fishing with my brother and his girlfriend, like that time I was carrying everything with us because we were going to be entering at one part of the river and working a lot of the river and then exiting at a different part. So it wouldn't have been very easy to kind of leave things out because different parts of the river I was going to be fishing different ways, and so I just had to bring it, and that was just kind of the what was in store for that day. I love fishing on the Kweejack or even on the Kenai or the Naknek, wherever. I love having a boat box that has all my heavy stuff, the stuff that I'm not going to bring with me every single time that I get out of the boat. But I'll always, like in that situation, I'll carry everything in my boat box, have the extra rods in the boat. But when I step out of the boat, I do have, like, always will have a pocket box of flies, and have my confidence flies or the things that I anticipate for the time of year, or that specific run. If it calls for a specific pattern, I'll have that in that pocket box to change to if I need to or want to.
What about travel? Obviously, people are going to be heading up there. What do you recommend for travel? Bags, boxes, containers, holsters. What do you got?
So I travel with the Orbis Carry It All bag, and it holds everything really comfortably. A lot of the big name fly fishing companies all have some sort of style of this bag, but this one is different than the rest in the sense that the rod storage is in the lid. And so with that, you get all of the bottom storage for your reels. I mean, I've hauled camera gear, I've hauled extra lines, extra fly boxes. Where the other companies that make these bags, they you open up the lid, it's a long, looks like kind of like a gun case, and the top half or the bottom half is just one long slot, and that's where you put all your rods and their rod socks. And then on the bottom half, you can put some reels and stuff. But this one really maximizes your storage capacity with putting the rods in the lid and giving you all that bottom storage for everything that you might need.
What else have we not hit? What else might someone have a question about when it comes to all things fly fishing?
I do have a preference of fly box. I like Plan D fly boxes
Okay.
for streamers. They have a hook that will hook the eye of your fly, and then you can stretch the fly out and stick the hook in the foam slots, and it keeps everything from flopping around, which is really nice. So a little bit more orderly and organized. When it comes to nymph boxes, I like the fish pond that was previously tacky, those silicone pads where you can stick your flies in there. They don't carry any memory like foam does. You put one thick hook into foam and it'll remember, and then you try to
Right.
put a small one there, it's going to be falling out. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Nice. Let's see what else. Hat. If you're going on a big trip, like, do you want your hat broken in before you get there? Because if you show up and you got brand new waders and you got a brand new hat, like, is Dagen the guide going to respect you, or is he going to think you just spent all the money to look like a fly fishing model?
You come to our lodge, we're going to give you a new hat. So I guess, I guess you're going to have to break one in anyways, assuming you wear it. But I think it's just important that you bring your lucky hat if you are superstitious or even a little stitious, that you
Yeah.
bring whatever is going to help you align your trip and help you have the day that you want or the week that you want, especially if it's what you would dub as a trip of a lifetime. Dot your I's, cross your T's, and make sure that you're getting all your juju in line to have a good trip.
Yeah. Awesome. Can you think of anything else?
Sunglasses.
Hmm.
Super important, and get a good pair of polarized ones. I don't take my fishing glasses out of my boat box. Too many times I've shown up to fish and, oh shoot, forgot my sunglasses. So boat boxes are nice because You can leave it in the garage and it's ready to just grab and go if it's packed correctly. I fished Costa glasses. I fished Oakley before these, but I do like these Costa. They're glass lenses. They're a little heavier, but the clarity is very good. I was fishing with my brother, and we were in Montana. He was playing junior hockey at the time, and we went and fished a section of the Madison. And I had these Oakley glasses that I just swore by. They're color enhancing, like look at things and it's a little bit brighter and makes things pop a little bit better. And I loved them. And he had just bought a pair of these Costa ones. And I was like, let me see those. I was like, I really think that there's not going to be a whole lot of difference, but I just want to see what the difference is. So I have them in both hands and put them on and off and on and off. And it was a world of difference. And so I immediately went and called Costa and got a pair in the mail. So
nice.
I do like these Costas a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, not being able to have polarized lenses, man, that makes such a huge difference, and you can get really frustrated, as I have before, forgetting the sunglasses. Never mind the glare that just kind of gets you after a while, but man, being able to see and being able to, like, that's a huge advantage to be able to have those glasses.
Yeah, and when you're fishing on the Kwijak or the Naknek, like, water clarity is way different than fishing a glacial river. It makes a huge difference. I mean, when I'm guiding, when I'm driving the river, I'm looking for fish, and you can see them even when you're flying around on steps. So super important as a guide to have those so that it can help you be a better guide, but it will help any fisherman be a better fisherman for sure. Being able to see through that water, like you're saying.
Yeah, there's no point putting yourself at a disadvantage, getting super, super cheap gear, getting super, super cheap waders, getting, $2 sunglasses, like all that stuff just ends up adding up, and it's an excuse maybe to spend a little bit of money, but it's going to enhance the experience and make the experience better. So spend enough to make sure that you're making the most of it.
Yeah, don't overspend. I mean, you don't have to break budgets to have a good trip or catch fish, especially. It's a lot of times money won't determine what kind of fisherman you're going to be. But yeah, it's important to have the necessities checked. And I'm a firm believer in buy once, cry once, especially with outdoor gear. You're going to put it through the ringer. You don't have to get the top of the line, but get something that's adequate that you can push a little bit to its limits and not ruin your trip when you're wanting to fish hard and your gear fails. Like, that's the worst. That's
the cry. If you buy once and then you enjoy it, it's like there's no tears.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it'll last you longer, and you don't have to return to the store and bought the thing that you were looking at first, but opted not to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, appreciate chatting with you. It's always good to talk some fly fishing, and man, it's really got me excited for this spring and then summer. Yeah,
spring, man. Ice off's coming quicker than we're ready for. I need to get some flies tied up for that. And but yeah, fishing's not too far away from us. Well, the traditional fishing season. I mean, a lot of fishermen, myself included, will fish the winter, but we don't have to fight the elements as much when it's warm.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. Please share. If you found today's conversation useful, you can go deeper with my writing on Substack. That's where I expand on these ideas from the show, share essays, reporting, and things I'm thinking about in real time. You can find it at From the 49th on Substack. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.